Truck Talk Media.
C10 Talk, episode 309. We've got Andy from Cummins Chevy Crew. Talk about the best of the best. Here we go. Episode 309 coming at you.
But then at the same time, I wanted to have more seats, for the kids. And I couldn't hardly use that truck after I had kids because you can only fit 3 people in it, So I decided I need to build a crew cab. And I guess I took all the things that I didn't like about the other build and decided to improve with this one, which probably going overboard on a lot of the things too, but I'm thinking, you only get one chance to build it, so you might as well do it right. You don't want to build it too nice to where you don't want to use it either. So there's a fine line there.
Damn, son. Hey guys, let me tell you about LMC Truck. Keeping generations on the road. Think about that. It's pretty deep. So whether your truck was handed down or something you went out and bought, odds are you were handed a bunch of paperwork, maybe a folder. In that folder was probably the catalog. You know the one, the most up-to-date and detailed catalog available today. It's like an encyclopedia for our trucks. Their website is just as detailed and informative. lmctruck.com. lmctruck.com. So whether you're restoring old memories or creating new ones, LMC Truck is here to help. They're more than just a parts company. They truly understand the lifestyle and passion of owning a classic truck. So get out there and get to work on your truck and know that LMC is here to help. You can get online, lmctruck.com, and order your free catalog today. Keeping generations on the road. lmctruck.com.
Let me tell you what Melvin Post is packing right here. I've got 411 posi track out back, 750 double pumper, Edelbrock intakes, scored over 30, 11-1 pop-up pistons, turbojet, 390 horsepower. We're talking some bucking muscle.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind? That just happened.
Welcome to C10 Talk, your C10 Truck podcast.
And now I have a chance to be the best, maybe the best in the world.
My old man is a television repairman. Got the ultimate set of tools. I can fix it.
I said I got 50 cents in that jukebox, and all I can hear is your mouth clapping. You hear that?
Here's your host, Ronnie Welch.
What is up? What is up, C10 Nation? How about a little Cummins Chevy Crew? And if you've listened to the pod for any amount of time, I think that we get to look back, pretty much pick what is the best of the best. And a 12 or 24 valve is up there, if not the top. One of the quotes or questions was, well, why would you pick that over a Duramax? Well, if you're looking for less problems, a 12 valve, one wire, no electronics, pretty damn good. And as you'll get to know Andy, not a big fan of wires and electronics. So, pretty good story. I reached out just because I've seen a few of his posts, and I thought, this guy's kind of putting together what would be the ultimate to me. I mean, a 67 to 72 crew, if they really made them, might be, definitely would trump. Obviously, there's guys that do make them, but not all that affordable. So I think a crew cab 4x4 with the Cummins. Of course, I would like a Duramax. Who wouldn't? I've got an LBZ with an Allison 6-speed in my daily, and I don't know that I'll ever top it as my favorite truck. I mean, day in, day out. The damn thing has 200, and I think I just hit 13,000 miles, 213. Still has the original brakes. And, I tow from big loads, small loads, medium loads. Every time I do a tire rotation, damn brakes still look good. So, they might not have been the best during the 88 to 98 era. GMT 400 OBS. but they definitely figured that shit out for the GMT 800, 99 to 06, or in my case, 07 Classic, which you've heard me say is a 06 leftover. But yeah, I mean, I would say a Squarebody Crew Cab with a 12 or 24 valve is right there with my NBS Cat Eye 0607 LBZ 6-speed Allison. That's the difference. So with the LBZ, you're going to get on the gear selector, you're going to get the up down of the 6-speed. So you can go into manual mode and you can shift it like you're shifting a manual without a clutch, of course. Either way, I think what Andy's building is just amazing. I think it'll last for another 50 to 100 years when he's done with it, and good for him. So I reached out. He's episode 309 coming at you, and I'll probably take a little bit of a break as we have the 4th annual senior year reunion just around the corner. So we'll be busy getting ready for that. It's always a great time. If you haven't registered, we probably have like 20 spots left. Kind of one of those deals where cool if we fill them, if not, no biggie, because we have a small venue. It's pretty amazing what we can do with the venue. Obviously, being a 5-story parking garage, we can put a lot of trucks in there, and people tend to like it. I mean, obviously, Arizona in March, early March, sun comes out midday, and it is warm. So you get in that parking garage, you get some shade, and you're out of the elements a little bit, but the weather's usually pretty good. We're looking at like mid-70s for the forecast of what I've seen so far. So if you're around and you can make it, come out to the reunion. If you've got a truck, register. If not, come on out on foot, hang out, and have a good time. It's free for you guys. And hey, if you can, catch a flight, come out, maybe catch a spring training game, and attend the 4th annual senior year March 7th pre-party, March 8th the reunion, and we look forward to seeing everybody. Andy, thanks again for taking the time. I had a great time chatting it up with you. And for you guys out there, appreciate you tuning in. Do what you do. Stay out of trouble. Have a great week. Late. What up, C10 Nation? We're back. I think this is going to be like 309. I've got Andy. Midwest, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Go by Cummins Chevy Crew on the social media there, on the Instagram. Andy, it's funny because I reached out and you're like, I don't know, maybe. What are we going to talk about? And we got a lot to talk about. So welcome to C10 Talk, and thanks for taking time out of your Friday to sit down and talk to us about what I think is probably one of the baddest combinations out there. I appreciate your time, brother.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've never done one of these before.
Yeah, we're popping that cherry. So no, we got it. It'll be fun. We'll just shoot the shit, have a Friday. Tell us a little bit about Andy. Are you a square body guy? Are you a Chevy guy? Or you grew up Chevy, and is it just squares? And then we're going to get into kind of the build.
Okay. Yeah, my first vehicle was a square body. It was an 84 Chevy standard cab, 4-speed, small block. I got it when I was 15 and restored it. My dad helped me restore it back then, and I guess fell in love with them from there. They're simple to work on. I like the interchangeability with them. Seems like there's, I don't know how many years from 73 to 91 that you can interchange parts with them,
Yeah, and growing up as a kid,
it's
funny how when they came out with the 81s, the guys that were rolling around in 75, 76 are like, hey, I should update my truck and put this 87 clip on the front of my truck and make it more modern. It was like you bought a new truck.
Right.
It'd be thinking like you bought an older truck, I don't know, let's just say like a 14, and then you can't do that anymore. But to think you could just, oh yeah, I like it. Finally, I'm starting to like that look of that 2022. So now I'm going to change a few things to make that happen. Obviously, you can't do that nowadays, but that was so popular back in the day to update your truck.
And actually, this build here, I'm doing that with, but opposite of that. So
yeah, I think
it's a 91.
Yeah, we do a lot of that.
Making it look like it's a 73 or 74. So
yeah,
I've taken a 91 cab and chassis and converting it to the older style. I started off liking the square headlights when I first got them, and slowly switched to liking the round headlights better. And it'd be a lot easier if I would have started off with a 73 truck, but I didn't. So do things the hard way.
At this point, you're building a whole truck from every nut and bolt. So to me, it's just merely interesting that the crew cab, and you're just piecing it all together. And it is cool to think, oh, if I would have started off with a 73, but at the same time, I had a 73. That's the first time they ever did a crew cab. I think you're better off with a later model truck because they got better, right? They figured shit out. And I don't have no problem with my 73. It was amazing, but harder to find, less production numbers. Whereas that mid 80s up until the end there, there's a lot of late 80s, early 90s trucks that you could pull from. So you're right. Like the amount of trucks that are out there still to this day, 40 years later, and they're still out there. So it's such a cool, and that's really why I want you on. And I love your build. I love the style, but you've taken what I consider is almost the best of everything, and you're making it into one build. And we know that the 12 valve is amazing. We know that the 205 is amazing. We know that Chevy trucks are amazing. And and who doesn't love a 73 Ford grill? Give me a break.
Right.
I mean, it's
I like
gorgeous.
That's my favorite year now. The deep grill that they had back then. That presented a whole bunch of other challenges with that grill being super deep like they are. I had to stuff an intercooler and a radiator behind that, and I still wanted to run the mechanical fan. So I've still got probably 3/4 or 1 inch clearance between the fan and the radiator. So I made it work, but I had to chop the heck out of the core support to make everything fit.
How far back did you put your firewall? Did you recess that?
I didn't touch the firewall. So
okay.
I was able to set the engine in a spot where you can still get the back valve cover off, and really you can access all the bell housing bolts good still. It just all really worked out. I thought I would have to notch out the firewall, but I never did. So it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it is funny to think, like you said, even just a 75, 76 grill, not having the recess that you do with the core support and everything that you're dealing with the 73, 74, you'd even probably have a little bit more room, but you made it work. And again, the 73, 74 grill is just fantastic. So walk us through you sitting down and I think creating a reality of what a lot of guys do dream about when you're sitting there in bed or church or wherever you're just daydreaming in your job and you're like, man, crew cab, square body, Cummins, 205, 4x4. It's like a episode of Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Yeah, there is a lot of thinking in your head as you're trying to fall asleep, how to do what or whatever. But this isn't my first Cummins Chevy build. I've got a standard cab, the green and white one. I don't post it much, but it was actually a body swap truck. That one started off as an 89 Dodge, and I took the body off, took it to the scrapyard and pieced a Chevy body onto the 89 Dodge chassis. And that was fairly simple to do. That was probably 20 years ago though. And there's a lot of things about that truck that I didn't like after I got it done that I wanted to improve on. But then at the same time, I wanted to have more seats for the kids, and I couldn't hardly use that truck after I had kids because you can only fit 3 people in it. So I decided I need to build a crew cab, and I guess I took all the things that I didn't like about the other build and decided to improve with this one, which probably going overboard on a lot of the things too, but I guess I'm thinking you only get one chance to build it, so you might as well do it right. But you don't want to build it too nice to where you don't want to use it either. So there's a fine line there. But I guess as far as wanting to use the Cummins, I thought about using the big block when I started building this crew cab. And big blocks are cool, but they're not as usable as the diesel. Always fooling with carburetors. They always seem to give fits, and they don't get good mileage. Using the Cummins diesel, it's a lot more reliable and daily. Decided to go with that. I've always been a fan of the 205, so I decided to use one of those, and it's got a Dodge rear end in it. It's got a AAM 11.5 in it in the rear end. Just trying to use all the stuff that I know works as far as reliability goes. But
Is it a Dana 60 up front?
yep, which I had to change the gears in it to match the rear. Which
What are you, 411?
373s is what I decided to go with.
Okay, but and you're on 37s?
35s.
35s,
Yep.
okay. Did you think about that at all? So let's go back to the green and white when you, go ahead.
Whenever I decided to use the rear end out of a 2010 Dodge, I thought if that works for their diesel, it's going to work for mine ratio wise. And I think it has a 342. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was a 342 gear in the rear end. But then later found out you can't get a 342 for the Dana 60.
Yeah.
So a 373 for the front, and I can't remember what the closest ratio for the rear is that comes to 373, but it's close enough to where it's not going to be an issue. It's like within 1%.
Yeah.
I actually haven't changed the rear end gears yet, but that's soon to come.
Okay. Yeah, and for the audience, all I'm thinking is 35s. Okay, so that truck, that Dodge truck with that rear end, that 2010 has a 285 on it, or something no bigger than a 305. So once you start going up wheel size or tire size, then you want to make sure you're matching that with the gear ratio, because you're going to start losing it. So at some point, a 35 and a 373 is really a good ratio. And a 37, you're thinking, okay, do I go to 411? Do I go 456? And you start to do the math on all that, because that tire is going to really eat some up your power.
It does, yeah. And I didn't want to have a ratio that was too low. And the RPM on the Cummins is, you don't want to spin them super fast going down the highway. So that gear should be all right with overdrive. Got the NV 4500.
Yep, which is perfect. It's just, the combo is absolutely amazing. One of the things I was going to go back on is you said you swapped your Square onto the 89, and you said, hey, there was a few things or a lot of things or things that, hey, this is common, right? We take on a project, you're going to learn as you go. It's going to make you better. And one of my favorite quotes is, what you get when you don't get what you thought you wanted is experience. So you got all this experience with this first build. What are some of the biggest things you learned that you now change and are implementing on the second build?
Okay. The main thing really that I don't like about the other truck is a lot of the body panels don't line up well. And I used a lot of aftermarket panels on that truck, fenders, doors, the hood too, but a lot of that stuff was aftermarket. And at the time, none of it fit well. The gaps are horrible. You could stick your thumb in certain spots and it's close in others. And they just don't line up well. But at the same time, I only had $15,000 in that truck after it's all said and done. And it's not too nice to use. I use the heck out of it. I pulled dump trailer with it and I use it. I keep it nice yet, but it's not too nice that I'm scared to get it out and use it as a truck. But the body panels alignment was the biggest thing that I wanted to correct with this build. And I tell you, the square body is probably the toughest automobile as far as making body lines right and gaps correct. I don't do a lot of body work, but from what I've heard that other body shop guys in that, it's one of the toughest ones to make correct. That was one thing. And then I never put air conditioning in that other truck. It was something I was always intimidated by. I don't know a lot about air conditioning systems and that. So I just chopped it all off the truck when I built that one. And so this one here will have air conditioning. It should be pretty nice.
Nice. You being in the Midwest, it's probably not something you have to have, but at the same time, it's just nice to have those.
Yeah, there's certain days that is definitely nice.
Will you be running like a stock system, aftermarket? What are you thinking
for the air conditioner?
Yeah,
I decided to go with vintage air. A couple of reasons. I like how it makes the firewall look clean, and I needed the clearance for the Chevy AC box. Comes really close to the turbo on these, so I wanted to increase that clearance issue there. So went with vintage air. and it's a really nice system. I've got it all hooked up. I haven't ran it yet, but it's not charged or anything yet. But it was pretty easy to install and do custom little things with it. But I'm glad I went with it.
Okay, so you decide you're gonna do it is really the way I look at it. And again, we're spoiled. And when you look at all the different options that you have, from aftermarket support to building the truck, I know at some point you were struggling with what color to paint the truck. What's some other big struggles that you've had to go through when you think about, okay, the decisions that you've had to make? Chassis upgrades, suspension, some motor issues, some adaptation issues. What are some of the bigger challenges that you faced on this build?
I think the most challenging part, or my least favorite part, I guess you can say too, with building a truck like this, is finding the parts, sourcing the parts, finding the parts that work with what you're trying to do. The amount of hours that are spent online trying to find what does sensors or brackets or all the little things you don't think of that goes into building a truck like this. That's the part that's not as fun to me. But otherwise, as far as the build goes, there's been a few areas where you try and plan out everything you do to where if you're gonna fabricate a cross member, say, it's gonna work with the exhaust whenever it comes through. Or I guess I'm just thinking of some of the things that I've done twice. I built 2 cross members for it because the first one didn't work with the exhaust. The hitch, I had to modify. I built a real nice hitch for it, and then when the exhaust system came through, it was going right for where the hitch bracket was. So I had to modify that. But trying to think things through, and so you only have to do something once, I guess that's a challenge, but it makes it fun too. I enjoy the fabrication part of it the most, I think. I like being challenged to figure out how to make certain components fit together and make it all work at the end and look factory is one of the goals that I have as far as this truck goes. I know it's got a Cummins diesel in it, so when you pop the hood, it's not the factory engine, but for someone that's never wrenched on a truck, say it's at a truck show and they walk by, I want them to think, oh, that could be factory. So that's one of the goals that I have with the thing too. But
Yeah,
as far as the color was concerned, yeah, that was definitely a challenge because I spent 3 years on this truck and I'm pretty much down to the bodywork right now, which I've been hit or miss on it because it's not super fun to do either. But as far as picking the color, yeah, you spend so much time on something and you only get one chance to paint it. So I guess if you don't like it, you have to build another one.
Yeah, it seems like you went with the russet metallic. Definitely pops and looks shiny, looks really great. And then you have some bling under the hood with the valve covers being all shined up and cleaned up.
Yeah.
So I think that russet goes pretty good with black as well. So when you get into that core support and you get into some of that, you're really, again, it's just I don't know that you can really go wrong. You're just finding that balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and trying to keep it simple too, but clean and have a little bit of stainless here or there just to make it look nice, but not overdo it at the same time. And that was a factory color too. So I wanted to keep somewhat of a factory color anyways.
Are you going to go with a beige? I don't know that I saw it. Are you going to go with a beige two-tone or are you going to go with a white?
Yeah, more of an off-white in the middle. And I guess I'm using PPG Deltron, and the white that the factory used, they didn't offer it in Deltron. A guy that's helping me with all these paint tips and everything, he helped me figure out what color in Deltron was closest to the factory off-white. So it'll be off-white in the middle and the roof.
Okay, yeah. So you're getting that classic two-tone look. You've got it's going to be beautiful. Chassis-wise, so you break down this 91 chassis, and what do you do to it? Are you reinforcing it? Obviously you're putting different axles underneath it, so you get to choose at that point What springs am I going with? Cross members, inner supports, so many different little options there that are fun, but you've got to think it through. Any big changes there?
I guess I was on the forums and that in a Facebook group that guys build these trucks. And there's guys that swear you have to box in the frame. And I'm not saying that's wrong or anything like that, but I decided not to. I don't think that adding 300 extra pounds in the engine bay it warrants really having a box frame. They got decent frames with them from the factory. I didn't do anything like that as far as beefing up the frame, but I did put better springs underneath it. I got the Alcan leaf springs for it, which are quite a bit more money than your generic lift springs. But I've had the truck out a couple times, drove it maybe 10 miles down the road and back, and the thing rides really nice. A lot better than any other square body I've had, but had the old rough country springs, and those things are just like a log wagon going down the country road. So I spent the money and got good springs for it. I did make different brackets for the rear shocks just because they were in the way of what I was trying to do, and I wanted to look a little bit more symmetrical back there. And I had to make new brackets for it anyways because I put the Dodge rear end under it. But as far as beefing the frame up, I didn't really do much. It does have a decent cross member underneath the engine, that also incorporated the engine mounts. And I splurged on that part as far as fabrication goes. There's a company, I don't want to botch it, but I think it's AGF or something like that, Fabworks. And I bought their Cummins conversion bracketry and cross member. It was a weld together kit, and for $300 or $400. And the guy has it all figured out. Pretty much just weld it together and bolt it in. I did add a couple of braces to it after I got it done. As far as that goes, it was pretty straightforward. I welded a bunch of holes shut in the frame just for aesthetics. Sure. There was probably 300 holes that I welded shut from the factory.
Yeah, you don't need all those.
No, I don't know what all they could have put on this.
Yeah.
To have 300 holes. But I welded them all shut because I didn't like the way they look. Maybe that's overboard. The thing was apart. So what's welding 300 holes and grinding them all smooth?
Yeah, yeah. You became a lot better welder. I think the biggest problem with the chassis on these 4x4s ends up being steering. Did you do anything crossover? Did you stay stock? What are you looking at from a steering perspective?
Yeah, I did put crossover steering on it.
Did you use like off-road design, or who did you use?
Yeah, off-road design, and I'm trying to remember.
So you're going to run like a two-wheel drive Borgeson box, or what box are you running?
I'm trying to think of whose box I bought. It has a red
it's red head
top on it. Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah, I bought their two-wheel drive.
It's a good box.
Yeah, they had good reviews in that. So
yep, for sure. That's probably one of the most popular ones.
Okay.
And then for the audience, just to put it in perspective, again, is instead of a drop pitment on the driver's side, you're going to cross over. So you're going with a two-wheel drive box in your stock location. You're going to mount it up. ORD does sell a lot of reinforcement backing. So in the back side of the chassis, you're going to, or think engine inside, you're going to have some bracing and support there, because what happens on a four-wheel drive with the flex, and that you're putting so much torque on that, it just stresses the frame. So now that you're doing a crossover and you're doing the upgrade, you're getting the support behind the steering box, you're going with the two-wheel drive steering box, and you're crossing over to the driver's side, which you probably ran a different spindle setup, knuckle setup on that side, and then pitches everything back over with the drag links. Again, it's 40-year-old stuff that people have figured out and made better. And you're going to have that. You're going to have that better just by upgrading that steering, and it's going to steer better, ride better. So you're building just one radical truck.
Yeah, I might add a steering brace to it behind the box yet.
Oh, okay. On the chassis then, like where?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so
they have the weld-on ones that go behind the box, and I missed that opportunity because it's all painted up now. But The frame looked good whenever I had it all apart. There wasn't any stress cracks or anything in it, but they do make a bracket that goes behind the steering box and it goes over to that front cross member and kind of gives it a little bit of support. So I might add one of those later. But
Yeah, I would.
there's a little bit of flex since you're pushing that steering, that drag link horizontally instead of forward and back. It does want to push the frame side to side a little bit harder than what you'd expect, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but once you reinforce it with that back brace, and then the other thing too is once you have the motor in there and you're gonna beef it up, it is. I think a lot of times these guys do this where they're really crawling. They're really putting some. The bigger the tire, the harder it is to move and the harder it is to steer. So it'd be interesting to see if that ends up being your quote unquote weak link. We already know that's an issue with these trucks and the Chev frames, that you found a nice one. Was it originally a 4x4? And I wonder, obviously for the most part, they're going to be 3/4 ton or bigger 4x4s. And I wonder if there would be much difference in that, being high hump versus low hump or something like that. If a guy found just a 3/4 ton crew cab work truck versus a 4x4.
Yeah, I don't know if the front frame horns are different in those different options there, but this truck was a factory 4x4, and I don't really honestly know if it was considered a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton, but it has the taller frame. I don't know if all crew cabs have that or if it's just the 1 tons, but it did have a Dana 60. So I guess that would be considered a 1 ton. But
yeah. And I don't even think they made a 1/2 ton back then. They did. If you think about remember this chassis is a 91. Yeah, no, I get that, but it was still a square body chassis. So I wonder, like, when you think about them going to an OBS truck and a crew cab, very rarely do you ever, I don't even think there was 1/2 ton anything unless it was like a Centurion, or I do remember in the NBS where they did that 1500 HD, and that was their version of a 6-lug crew cab, but that was in the NBS. So your cat eye style GMT 800 versus the GMT 400. So I think that all those chassis are going to be your bigger box chassis. So for the audience, I think it's 11 inches versus 8 inches. It's very underneath the cab. It's a lot thicker. It's a lot meatier. It's a lot more heavy duty. Coming up to the engine, though, it doesn't carry that same height. Yeah. But did you ever think about making it a short bed? What were some other decisions that you were going through?
So you bought a C10 and it either had AC at one time or it wasn't even an option. Well, Vintage Air has the solution for you. Their SureFit kits are designed to place the evaporator and hoses behind the dash for a factory clean look. The Vintage Air SureFit kits are the best value and the most completely engineered air conditioning system you can install in your C10. Damn, son, the choice is obvious. VintageAir.com.
So you're thinking about converting your truck from a long bed to a short bed. Here's what you need. Brothers Trucks long bed to short bed conversion bracket. Includes laser-etched steel templates with all the holes clearly marked and steel inner C-channel braces. It also includes front-to-rear brake lines, shorter parking brake cables, hardware, and all the detailed instructions telling you what to do. You can also jump on Brothers' YouTube channel for a detailed, step-by-step video to make the process easier. Brothers Trucks has an easy solution for you, and they even offer bedside parts as well. BrothersTrucks.com. Classic Performance Products, CPP back. Joe, let's talk X10 spindles. Go.
One of our most popular parts through the years has been our 2.5-inch drop modular spindles. Really popular part. Well, we've kind of taken that to the next step. We've emulated late model Corvette, Silverado, Chevy technology into our new X10 drop spindles. They use a steel hub, sealed bearing hub, really strong piece. It's oversized bearings, definitely great for a guy using big brakes, big wheels, which I'm sure all your guys are.
You need a new spindle anyways. You're going to lower your truck. You're running a bigger wheel, a bigger brake. CPP's got it for you with their new X10 spindle. Joe, as always, thank you. CPP, classicperform.com. It's classicperform.com. Sniper 2. Are you ready to switch out that old carb for a modern EFI system? Well, Holley has a solution for you. The all-new Sniper 2. This new system was redesigned from the ground up. Available in tumbled polished or black powder coat, and there's 3 available tuning interfaces. A classic 3.5 handheld, a 5-inch mountable, which includes a GPS speedo or a Bluetooth module so you can use your smartphone. Another big bonus is the Sniper 2 has a built-in transmission control module. So if you're looking to upgrade to a 4-speed overdrive 4L60, 4L80, you now can with ease. Holley.com to get started today. Holley.com.
Did you ever think about making it a short bed? What were some other decisions that you were going through?
I think early on in the build, it crossed my mind a few times, but I decided not to. They are pretty neat if they're lifted up a little bit and they're a long bed yet. I think they look good proportionally. Even that's not dogging on like the 2-wheel drives that are lowered and long beds, because they look cool too. But if you lift these 4-wheel drives up and they're a long bed, I don't think that they look like extremely long or anything like that. The short beds are cool, but I actually ran into some new old stock beds early on in this build. I had to drive out to South Carolina for them, but a guy had on Facebook Marketplace had 3 brand new beds from 1985 stored in a warehouse that had came off of utility trucks that were later converted into utility trucks. So they were 1980s brand new takeoff beds, and I just got lucky enough to get a hold of all 3 of them. My wife and I took a trip. It was, I don't know, like a 12-hour drive maybe, and I got all 3 of them. They're perfect condition. They still had the dealer emblem on the tailgate. They still had a little bit of dirt in the fender from wherever they were driven from the dealer to wherever they took the bed off to put the utility beds on. So I had the long bed already. The frame was already a long bed, and short beds are hard to find in good shape. You see a lot of guys cutting up a long bed and making a short bed out of it. Kudos to them, because that looks like a ton of work sheet metal wise, and having to notch the frame out and shorten the truck up, because they never came as a short bed from the factory in the crew cab. But
it's funny because the Roadster Shop just put that crew cab out, and it's I think it is like 7374 crew cab short bed 4x4, and it looks rad, but because our eyes and our history, it just doesn't look proportional. It's so funny because I can walk out to I have a 07 Classic 06 Cat Eye Duramax. Love it. Love the look of it, everything about it. And it's like my brain's like, no, that's right. And then you look at a crew cab square body short bed, and it just does not look right at all. And even on the ground, I had Yellowstone, which was my 73, and I had really thought about maybe putting it all the way down and making like a 2.0, 3.0 type deal where, okay, make it a short bed, slam it, make it a 4x4, whatever. And they just don't, even on a 6.5 foot short bed versus an 8, it just doesn't really look right. It's so funny how proportionally it's just off a scotch. And so having that long bed and then going up it's going to look pretty radical. The other thing you have to keep in mind is sometimes you have to change out some trim stuff too. So by keeping it crew cab, long bed, you're going to be pretty much set on your trim. What trim are you using?
So I want to do the traditional aluminum trim that goes in between the 2 different colors, between the 2-tone. And I've started collecting the trim at junkyards and stuff.
So just you're using OS type stuff. You're using OE.
Yeah,
stuff,
I'm trying to, because I know there's companies out there that make really high quality stuff, and I might end up having to buy a few pieces to fill in what I don't have. But I stumbled across a truck at a junkyard a few months ago, and it had pretty much 90% of what I need. I still need the back doors, because I got the parts truck that I was getting it off of was a standard cab, but had a lot of the pieces I needed. and you can clean it up pretty nice. And I do want to paint the center of it that mustard color, which makes the truck all that more pretty much incorrect. But like you said earlier, I'm taking all the things that I like about these over the years, and a 73 or 4 never had the mustard trim, but this one's going to have mustard trim.
I agree. People will look at it and think, but I agree. I love the 77 trim. I love the 73, 74 grill. I don't know how old you are exactly, but I'm 51 and you're hitting all the cues. Like I see a 77. I'm like, I love that trim. I love that color. And it does look really good with the russet. It definitely balances it out. The 73. What wheels are you going to run?
They are, gosh, now I'm not going to think of the brand again.
While you're trying to think about that, another question that I have, and then we'll come back to it, because I often think when I don't think about something, I can remember it. But you're going to go with a mechanical fan. Why did you decide to go with a mechanical fan versus going with some electric fans?
Well, to be completely honest, the main reason is because I don't care for electrical items. And eliminating electric fans was just one more place where I could eliminate an electrical component. I like mechanical things, hence why I have a mechanical diesel engine in it. It doesn't take any wiring to run. I've been driving it around with no wiring. You get it running and it stays running with no battery. I mean, I've just never been a fan of electrical stuff. I'm doing everything on this truck myself except for the wiring. I'm going to hire a guy to do the wiring. A guy down the road has a hot rod shop, and he is very particular with wiring, does an excellent job, and I'm just going to pay him to do it. So that's the main reason, I guess. One less thing to fail.
What about radiator?
Mechanical.
What are you running? A big block stock OE 4-core? Are you running an aluminum? What are you changing up there?
So I decided to use second gen Dodge radiator because I'm using a second gen Dodge intercooler. So they fit together real well. And I ended up buying the radiator on eBay. I think eBay's got insanely cheap stuff like that sometimes. I think it was only like a couple $100.
Cool. And that makes
and
sense.
It holds pressure, so
they're mated together. You're going to run dual batteries, or are you going to run them in the stock positions on both ends?
I decided to run one battery. My other truck only has one battery, and they just buy the biggest one that fits in the square body battery tray. I think it's 800 and some cold cranking amps, and they work fine with one battery. And it's going to be on the driver's side. So
okay,
I don't know what side they normally had them on, but
they're normally on the passenger side, but you can, they do make a driver's side for if you ever run duals. Like I've done that before, where you run a dual battery, and depending on what components you have, I think that
I did put it on that side because it's a straight shot to the starter for the Cummins. So
you answered the question. I saw where you picked up a stock gauge cluster with a diesel fuel and oil pressure at 80. I feel like you're going to not run Dakota Digital then, and you don't like that electrical perspective.
Well, it's nice, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it looks like 100% stock. And I like the old gauges with the yellow or the orange needles. Just like the look of the stock gauges. I tried running the tachometer last weekend with a Dakota. It's like a conversion box that they have. It didn't work. So I'm in the process of hooking it through a different box that I found on eBay and driving that tack off of the alternator. There's a signal wire that I tapped into inside the alternator, and I'm going to run it through a conversion box, and hopefully it'll make my tachometer work. But yeah, finding that tachometer with the fuel gauge underneath it was pretty hard to, there was only one for sale that I found, but yeah, I paid a little bit of money for it. But
I'm here to tell you that you're hitting all the right moves except for that one. And it's your truck, so we can agree to disagree on this. But I'm telling you, man, RTX, Dakota Digital, the biggest decision you would have to have is what year you wanted to be if you decided you wanted to if you wanted the early years versus going into the late. Obviously, you're going to have a late, I don't know, obviously, but I assume you're going to have a later dash, so like a 91 dash pad.
Yeah, I have to, I think, because I don't think I wanted to run the earlier dash, but I don't think that it fits around the cluster correctly. I haven't
That's
tried it
yeah,
yet,
so
but
that's where you'd have to get an early bezel and then decide. You could change it up, but
yeah,
like you said, they're all interchangeable. The thing about running a Dakota RTX gives you the old look. You get to change the colors. It looks so good inside, and you still get like a kind of an analog look, but you still have your little windows that are going to be your digital. The big one is where you can tell them, hey, I want it diesel converted, and they'll change everything up from mostly your RPM. So you don't need a 6, 7, 8,000 RPM.
right.
You
Yeah, I
can go
wasn't sure
down
if
to
if
they
they
can,
sold
yeah, they make
the
them.
ones that.
Yeah,
Okay.
plenty of guys have converted doing a Cummins or any diesel that's going to have a lot higher RPM. And yeah, I would, if at all possible, every build I ever did, I would run those RTXs. I just love the look. I love the style. I love that it does have that. It just has all the modern things. When you think about like even going into the AC, it's okay. I can do a trip. I can do a north
Yeah.
south compass. It gives me all the information I need when I'm cruising. And because the RTX, it does have the retro look, but it has the digital readout there, and you just have some buttons underneath the dash. But definitely a fan of that. But you have done a great job of finding the real hard to find. Now, one thing that you need to consider, and man, I hope you do this. I hope you can find it. I did just find one on either Marketplace or eBay. Are you going to run the OG diesel badge?
Oh, on the side of the truck?
Yeah.
I never thought that far ahead.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I probably should.
I just saw one and I'll find it. And if I can buy it or whatever, I'll link it to you. And they're not cheap.
Yeah.
I think his was a Scottsdale, which was cool. So it's a Scottsdale with the diesel badge. And I love the diesel badge. And the diesel badge would look really good with your russet metallic 77 trim because of the
Yeah.
color flow, because a diesel badge has the orange and the yellow, which for me is like my kryptonite. Yeah, I just love those diesel badges. So I'll see if I
Yeah.
can't find it. I search them every now and then. Now, you can also go with, I use billet badges. There's a few there's RAD Machining, billet badges. There's a few different guys, but you could make your own badge as well, and they could copy that diesel badge. So if you wanted to have it, say, if you gave it a name, for example, I've got Orange Slice and I do those. I did a Yellowstone on the dash. I've done Orange Slice on the dash. I'm doing one for my Big Sky truck on the dash, and they can make them on the side as well. They're not, I think they're actually pretty reasonable pricing wise. If you did want to do a fender badge and you had a name or something like that, and then make your own diesel option, the guys
I have thought about that, but I haven't come up with a good nickname for the truck yet. So I guess I was gonna give it a little bit of time after we got it on the road, and if it gets a nickname, which it probably will.
Yeah, it will. And that's cool. I like your idea because sometimes people will reach out to me, name my truck. I'm like, dude, I don't even know anything about it. Like it has to speak to you. You have to smell it, touch it. It's got to break down 5 times. You got to go through some shit to figure out who the truck's going to be and the name and when it fits. So
it'll just stick when it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what about interior wise? Are you running a double bench? You going buckets and console? What are you going?
Yeah, so I got a parts truck in the barn and it had perfect seats in it, but they're just the wrong color. But they're 2 bucket seats. Eventually, probably have them recovered. And I don't know what the pattern's really called. You probably would. It's what you think of when you think of a 70s couch. It's got the lines on it, the checkered lines.
Yeah, kind of houndstooth is what they call that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm.
They have another one too. That's what is that other? You have a houndstooth, and then they have another name. I have some that I'm looking at right now. I try to get a lot of that stock stuff, and I have some right now, and I will show you. The way my computer is turned right now, it's at me. I'm looking up in the studio attic here, but I don't know. So I'm putting all this material is going in 79s that this stuff's going in. So yeah, we'll be talking back and forth. I have a few different options. I'm just trying to think about what would look best with that color combo. You got a lot going on there.
Right.
Boy,
Yeah.
I know it's easy and you run out of money and interior just becomes the redheaded stepchild, but boy, you
Sure.
can really make that interior pop. And it does end up getting to what you started off. You're like, dude, you spend so much money on the truck, you don't want to take it out. But
Right.
I remember talking to an old hot rod guy one time, and he said, I opened up the door on this old hot rod. I don't even know what it was, 34 Ford or something. And I was like, holy shit, look at the inside of this thing. And he goes, hey, I spend all my time sitting on the inside of this thing. I want the inside of this thing to be just right. And I'm like, that's nice, because we're always so worried about the outside looking great and the inside ends up being the last thing, and you run out of money and time and whatever. And so that'll be one of those things where you try to do the best that you can with what you got left.
Yeah. And I do have a pile of money in this thing already. Luckily enough, it was spread over 3 years so far, but I probably have 50 grand in this truck. And it's like, it don't even literally look like a truck yet.
Yeah, that's nothing because you're doing all that work. But when you think about the chassis and the Cummins, what about, this is just a dumb trivial question or thought, but I'm a loop guy. So when you do your carpet, are you going loop, or because that's another thing where you cross over there, because I think it's 76 is the last year for loop. And then they went with that damn furry boat interior on the inside. So you can go with a little bit hardier loop and it's a little better.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to do the loop if they offered it in the colors that I wanted.
Yeah, they do. Because
I did a little bit of research. I think I can get it.
They do. I did that on Yellowstone. So you're going to get that. I would think you'll get that brown and then have a nice leather or pleather and then the right insert. The big thing is whether or not you wanted to have buckets and a console, because that was a big thing for me with Yellowstone. It was like, God, I ended up doing the 2 seats because I wanted to have this 3x3. But then I was like, oh man, two buckets with the console would be bitching. And I've seen this done as well, where you do a stock console or you do like a 2018 console, and then you can have some of that rear AC as well. So there's options there. And I've seen a guy do it on a Blazer where he did a stock Blazer truck console and then ran rear AC to the back too. That was the one thing on the Vintage Air. It works great.
Does that duct work? Does the ductwork go underneath the carpet when they do that, or how does that work?
Hey guys, are you thinking about swapping out your old motor for a more reliable LSLT based power plant? Behind each PSI harness, you get over 10 years of experience in the business, online tech support, phone support, and harnesses made in the U.S. That's psiconversion.com. What's up, guys? Who doesn't like to bundle and save? The team at UP Car Parts knows this, and they put together 7 different bundles for you to choose from to save up to 20% off of your lighting. From headlights to taillights to marker lights, UP Car Parts got you covered. upcarparts.com. Save up to 20% today. You've heard me talk about my gauges. Dakota Digital. I love them. Dakota Digital has the best gauges for our trucks. These kits are complete with sensors for any engine. They look just like the stock clusters, but have all the technology you'd expect from Dakota Digital. It's like a modern truck, but even better in a classic. Dakota Digital is absolutely the best in aftermarket gauges, so check them out at dakotadigital.com. dakotadigital.com. Yeah, he actually, I'd have to find out. He's a local guy, and he worked with Vintage Air, and he put another AC system in the console and still had enough room to put a few things in the console. I know you don't like wiring, but it was more wiring than it was ducting, because he ran a little unit in the back. And the one thing in the console, and that was in a Blazer, and it was funny. He goes, dude, this thing runs so cold, I have to turn it off because I start getting condensation and coldness on my console. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. That was the one thing, though, that I will say when I had Yellowstone and I had the Vintage Air, is the back seat, mostly because of the window, it doesn't get quite as chilly as I would have wanted. Now, I'm in Phoenix and we were making road trips to Texas and California. So
they have updated their systems.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A SureFit 5, which is
Gen 5.
Yep. And I don't think that's going to change much, but I also think you being in the Midwest, you're not going to have to keep some of that heat. And then I didn't have any tint either. So having they do make a real nice clear ceramic tint as well. Another thing that would be fun with your truck, especially because you're running the 77 yellow, is a camper special badge. So if you run the old badges, which is going to be your camper special, your trailering special, and then the little teepee, which I would probably just go with the teepee. I think that would look really cool, and you don't have to run.
I have some of those badges already.
Oh, yeah. So that'll be perfect.
They're on another truck, but yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fun. You'll have to figure out that blend, because even that back piece, that back trim that goes behind the cab, there's different ones, and how that's going to fit, and what you're going to put in there. And what about fuel? Are you running stock doors and keeping stock doors?
Yeah, so those beds that I got, those new old stock beds, since they're from the 80s, they have the fuel doors.
That's nice.
It is nice. It's definitely not period correct again, but
no, it is period correct though, because it's a 91 and it had fuel doors. And I know you're saying I'm making it a 73, but with 77 trim. And I think 79 is the first year for doors, maybe 78. But doors are clean. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind having the doors on there, but it'll have doors on both sides, and one door will go to nowhere and the other one will go to the fuel tank. I'm only running one fuel tank. Things like that don't bother me.
But why are you only running one?
I guess the tank, I didn't see that I would ever need more than the capacity
gallons
that it has. And seems like there's always problems running duals between the selector and that.
There can be. I worked through that in my years, but there can be. But I tell you, the funny thing about that is a lot of guys, especially when it comes to diesel, your guys want those auxiliary tanks, right? And so you've got a built-in tank that you can get an extra 19 gallons. Granted, you're going to be getting, let's just call it 19 miles a gallon. So you're looking at my Mesa Public Schools math. You're looking at some really good fuel mileage here. But you could, for $200, maybe $250, let's just call it $350 with an actuator and a switch, you could switch it over and have dual tanks, and shit, you got almost 38 gallons. Half the time, I want extra diesel just so I can, when I go use my $1 off credit that I save up for whatever, I want to I just need another storage capacity to make sure I'm getting as much fuel as I can. And if you did a long road trip, it'd be nice. But okay, so you got fuel. The other thing you could do is, are you going to run any airbags in the back, like tow bags?
I'm not sure yet, because we have a camper and it is tongue heavy. And if I use it to pull that, I don't know how well these springs that I have are going to hold it. So I guess I'll wait till it's done and see how that goes.
Yeah. Does it have an overload for the rear? Do those springs have an overload?
No, they're just
Yeah, you might need an overload, and then just run 2 bags, airlift bags for towing, and then it'd be cool, because then you could put some onboard air, and then you'd have onboard air, which again, we're getting into more wiring, but
we're gonna have to do away with them wires. I'll just have to air it up at the shop.
Oh my God, you're killing me. Yeah, you could easily have a little Vire 5-gallon tank, and then just pop those 2 bags. And then when you're towing, you just look at your gauges and then pop, and you're set to go. And you're fighting some of that technology that we get the best of both worlds. But
I know it.
Yeah.
Wires aren't too bad, but
yeah. The other thing I was thinking is you could run a rear a rear like 25-gallon tank, but you've got your saddles and you've already got those beds. What did you end up doing with those other beds? Did you sell them to make money to help offset the cost of this whole thing?
I was going to, but I thought about it, but with as hard as it is finding parts anymore, and as much as I like these square bodies, I decided to hang on to them.
Good.
I just put them up, and I'm just going to hang on to them.
That's
I don't think I'll find any that nice ever again.
Yeah,
if I sold them, I'd probably get $2,500 a piece out of them or something. But to me, it's not worth having them around for later.
If they've both have tailgates, $2,500 for that that's probably a pretty good deal. I would almost think you
Right.
could get a little
Yeah,
bit more.
and
So now the audience is going to be like hitting you up like crazy because they're going to want those bags.
well, let's just say I sold them then.
Okay, yeah, we sold them. We got rid of them. My one last question that I wrote down was we didn't really get into it, but what kind of work went into getting that divorced NP205 in there? Because I don't even know what transfer case you would have had in a 91. And were you able to use some of the stock cross members, or did you have to fab up some of that?
Yeah, I think it had a 208. It was an aluminum transfer case. I think that might be the 208. But yeah, I had to fabricate my own cross members for it. Got some polyurethane bushings, keep it isolated. And I think the transfer case came out of an international pickup truck from the 70s. And I had to take it all apart, completely clean it up and rebuild it. But got a bunch of parts from Torque King 4x4 and a nice manual. That they sell a manual that is step by step for rebuilding these things. Anybody could pretty much do it. Upgraded some of the shafts inside. Yeah, I mounted it in the center of the truck, and for whatever it's worth, the front drive shaft's the same length as the rear. That's nice, I guess. It helps out the geometry of the rear. I don't have to run a carrier bearing for it, so no real reason. I guess one of the reasons why I ran a divorced 205 is adapting it to the NV4500 was simpler. And the NV4500, the mated version of that out of like a Dodge, had problems with the fifth gear nut backing off. And they say, you ever heard fifth gear going out on an NV4500? A two-wheel drive NV4500 doesn't have that problem because of the way that it's designed in the back. That nut can't back out or whatever.
Yeah. I did see you made some linkage to get, because your transfer case is far back, so you made some linkage because of that. Maybe because you did put it back in the way that it almost ends up being a center frame brace, which could end up benefiting too. There's a lot going on there with everything.
Yeah. I think some of those cross members act as frame braces, including the transmission cross member. It's pretty heavy duty, and it keeps the frame square. Yeah, there was one point in the build where I had the body off of it, and I realized that the frame rails weren't parallel with each other, if you will. They weren't straight up and down, but my transmission cross member pretty much holds everything where it needs to be. So, yeah, they do act as braces too.
Yeah, that's good. It's all coming together. All right, a little bit of a lightning round here. Brakes, what are you doing for brakes?
Factory brakes in the front, and then the disc brakes in the back off of that 2010 Dodge. It does have a parking brake, which is an upgrade from that first truck that I built. It does not have a parking brake, which is a pain in the ass. You guys shut it off and put it in gear if you're somewhere that it could roll away. So I got that all hooked up a few weeks ago. It has some custom cables built for it. So this one will have a parking brake.
That's nice. How about Hydro Boost? Are you using factory Hydro Boost then?
Yep, factory Hydro Boost. And I don't know if it's really called a proportioning valve or what it is, that the block that goes underneath. It's normally underneath the engine, distribution block or whatever.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Portioning valve. On square bodies, it's asinine, right? On a 6772, it's up by the master cylinder, and then on square bodies, they put them up on that cross channel there.
Yeah, I had to eliminate the factory one and put one that was designed for disc brakes in the rear. So otherwise, I think it would lock up the rear brakes.
Yeah, a little bit bigger lines. Did you run all new lines? Did you do inlines? Did you build them? What'd you do for all your fuel and brake and everything lines?
So for the brake lines, I ran that new, I'm not sure what it's called. It looks like it's copper, but I don't think it's actually copper. It might have a percentage in it. It's easy to bend and make it go where you want. I use that stuff for the brake lines. Built them all off a roll of tubing. And then for the fuel lines, I'm running the Air Dog fuel pump, which is electrical, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to run the mechanical lift pump, but I was starving the injection pump. I couldn't get enough fuel to it, so it wasn't running to its full potential. So I put the air dog on it, and it runs pretty dang good. So most of those lines, I originally ran them in stainless steel from the tank, and I do have a stainless return line. But with this air dog, a lot of them are standard rubber fuel hose or whatever. So
Sure.
most of them, it's big stuff too, half inch or something like that.
Not going to starve it. How about exhaust?
The exhaust is 4-inch stainless steel from the downpipe all the way back. And I built that from scratch pretty much.
So no straight pipe, no muffler, nothing like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Nope. And it's not obnoxious. It's not too loud, I don't think.
Yeah, just better insulate that cab because those old rock tumblers, I used to have one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds cool, but then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, how much conversation do you want to have?
Oh, yeah. Well, now you could completely, like we said, you can sound deaden that whole thing. And square bodies love sound deadening because those doors, man, they sound so much better. They close better. They give them a little weight. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I plan on putting it in the doors and on the floor and the firewall, but the roof, I wasn't going to run a headliner because I painted it real nice. And so the roof will not have sound deadeners. So it might resonate a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, that's cool. I do that too. That I've had the headliners in Yellowstone. They're huge. They made those cabs without headliners, and so it's cool and adds that old school iron to it all.
Yeah.
I'm highly going to recommend you run that second tank. I think it's going to be cool to if you run that diesel emblem for the audience, probably one of the coolest emblems out there. And then did you ever think about those wheels and then what wheel you're going to run?
Yeah, I still can't think of what brand they are.
A Steely?
They're steel though. They're steel wheels.
Like US wheels, Detroit steel.
That's what it is. It's US wheel.
Okay, 1610.
They're 16. Yep. 10 inches wide.
And then what are you going to run caps?
Yeah, I'm running caps off of, I guess it would be like the 73 or 74 caps.
Yeah.
Which those are hard to find.
Yeah, 3/4 ton for the audience. You got to find the bigger caps. So they're not as easy to find. I've got on Big Sky 25, I've got GMC ones, which are even harder to find.
Oh yeah.
And running those. And then I picked up a set of Chev ones. I have a few Chev ones because they're a little easier to find. But Chev 3/4 ton caps are same. You got to find them, but I love the 1610s. That's exactly what I'm running on the truck I'm doing right now. So those with caps look really good. That white will pop. You're gonna get your Spanish gold mustard in there, and then you're gonna have the mustard trim. Man, it's gonna be one hell of a truck.
I'm running the short door panels on it too.
Yeah, perfect. For the audience, those ended in 76. Fan of the short door panel with the color in there for sure. That's the way to go. What's left? You're gonna rhino line the bed. You're gonna leave the bed painted. Are you gonna use the bed? Are you gonna color match it?
Yeah, I thought about that too. And I thought about maybe just painting the sides of the inside, the body color, and then maybe putting a liner on the floor so that I could use it a little bit more. Again, these beds are like that. They got factory paint on them and they're not scratched at all. There's no dents in the floor. So I'm going to be pretty easy on them.
Yeah, that is funny. You'll have to figure out what you're going to end up doing. What about bumpers? I think a stock front bumper on this, one thing I would recommend, and I think you're past that point, is I always want to just cut off 1 inch to 1.5 inches of the front because I want it tucked with the stock kind of sport bumper. Are you going to run a step bumper? What kind of rear step bumper are you going to run?
So the rear bumper, which a lot of people don't really care for this, but I'm putting a roll pan on it, and I don't think I'm going to run a rear bumper at all. I'm not sure if that's completely legal, but I think they look clean without a rear bumper. I got the same way on that standard cab truck, and I think it looks nice and clean.
You're killing me. You're killing me, Smalls.
I can always add a bumper.
No, here's my thought. I like, a roll pan. Okay, whatever. But if you're going to do that, just run a sport bumper and you get the best of both worlds. So you do get a little bump in there and you could tuck it pretty tight because you could shorten up the brackets. Yeah. There's ways to cut brackets and get it really tight in there. And you still get that little bit of a look. I got to think you're going to run a hitch, a receiver.
Yeah, I got a hitch that pokes out underneath the roll pan. Just tucked in, but
yeah, because you can run a hidden hitch behind a plate and lift up your plate, fold down your plate. Hey, again, your truck, you're going to do what you're going to do.
That's a good idea.
Out.
I never thought about doing that, but
I just think
I'm past that now.
if you run a sport bumper, then you still get the look. But either way, I think on a slammed truck, roll pan is, there's an old post. I'm going to have to find it. It's funny. It's a chick with a roll pan and their butt's all tucked up underneath there. And then it shows a real nice big meaty booty with the bumper. So you're like, which one do you want? It's funny. The old Corvette style roll pan, and guys do that on trucks and whatnot. But all right, we got to think of a name. We're going to find you some diesel badges. I'm going to talk you into running Dakota Digital and
actually, I never realized that Dakota Digital made ones that look that factory. When we spoke of that earlier, I didn't realize that they even offered it.
Yeah, so they have HDX, RTX. I forget what the kind of entry level is. ATX, HDX, and then the RTX. RTXs are just absolutely stunning, and they look retro to the period that you want. So like in this one, you're going to have to just make a decision. Do I want a 73? Do I want a 76? And they have the years broke up because GM changed the way the gauges were. So you get a pick. And then with that, you can say, I want the diesel ones, and you can get diesel ones. And then they'll change mostly just the RPMs are going to change.
See, and I didn't know that was an option. I thought, geez, my diesel's never going to spin 5,000 RPM or even 6.
Yeah. So here's the number one thing that I love about your aftermarket gauges, and this is so dumb, is nobody cares about the world's biggest fuel gauge. Like, I don't need a whole cluster set aside for fuel anymore. Exactly. I just need a little gauge that tells me how much fuel. And for you, once you listen to me and you run that second tank, you ain't ever going to run out of fuel. So I'd rather have that be my RPM and see my RPM and see my MPH, and you can cluster around and do whatever you want. So it'll be pretty cool that you get the different looks. We'll do some research here and get it over to you and then go from there. But yeah, it'll be fun. Okay, so you got a lot going on. He's going to do one thing for me. Well, he's got 3 or 4 tasks. He's going to get rid of the roll pan. He's going to add the 19 gallon. He's going to run Dakota Digital and maybe even go with the aftermarket electric fan. But the number one thing I need you to do, Andy, is post more on your social.
Yeah, okay.
We want to see it. We want to see it.
Yeah, I guess I could post more. Yeah, there's some things that I skipped.
You can't post less. You can't post less.
It's funny because sometimes I'll post something and I thought that's really cool, and it gets like no interaction, and then you post something that's just dumber than heck, and it gets thousands of views and likes and everything else. It doesn't really make sense, but
don't stress that. Don't ever try to figure out the people or the algorithm. Here's
the algorithm
Here's why I want you to post more. Not even just because I want to see more, but because for you, it's cool that it's like a diary, and you get to look back and be like, oh, dude, I remember when we did this. Oh, I remember when we did this, and this is cool. Look at this. And honestly, use it as your own forum where you might not be like, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing here. Hey, what do you guys think about this? And you might get some cool opinions and be like, oh, wow, I never even thought about that. What rear tail band do you run? So do you run a rear tail band? Or are you going to just leave it? Are you going to have it say Chevrolet on the back? Or are you going to put a tail band on it? Because that's another issue where are you trying to make it a 73 truck? Are you trying to make it a 73 with 77 trim? Or are you trying to make it a 77 truck with a 73 grill? What? Or you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not stressing over what's correct with 73 or that. I do the older, I'm not sure what the year range was on the first version of the tailgate of the Squarebody.
Yeah, really 70 up to 76, I think 77, 78 even have tail bands. So
and I like the aluminum insert that they used in those years, but I don't like the tailgate in itself as much as the later version because the edges aren't rolled. They're straight cut, which isn't a deal breaker, and I have a couple of those tailgates, but these beds that I got came with perfect 85 tailgates, and they have the rolled seams on the sides. So I'm not sure if I can put that earlier trim piece in the middle. If it fits, I haven't even addressed that at all. But if it does, I'll probably do that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And you're right. Those are better tailgates. They're just that little bit of roll in there just cleans it up a little bit. So a lot of little things. All right, the audience, you guys can check him out. It's pretty straightforward at Cummins Chevy Crew. at Cummins Chevy Crew. Andy, we appreciate your time. We'll get this out next week. Stay on the line. Don't go away. Thanks for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
What do you think? What do you think? What would you build if I said you could build your ultimate truck? What would your platform be? What truck? What chassis? What motor? What transmission? What transfer case if it was 4x4? Front end, rear end? What are you thinking? What would you build? Let me know. I would entertain that. I would enjoy hearing what you guys think and what you think about what Andy's doing. All right? Appreciate you tuning in. Episode 309. And we'll be back post-reunion with 310. I don't even know what it's going to be. I've got a few of them rocking, ready to go. We'll see where it all spaces out. All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate it. Late.